Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shanai Shanai Ruparamed Buddhya Dhriti Grihitaya Atma Sangsthang Manakritava Nakinchidapi Chintayet. Read the translation. In this chapter, Lord Krishna is describing the process of dhyana yoga, the very difficult process of meditation that is not recommended for the sage. In this sage, the recommended process for God realization is chanting the names of Krishna. However, many of the instructions in this chapter are very useful for people who are chanting Hare Krishna. The process of dhyana yoga and the process of Bhakti-yoga, they have many, although they appear to be quite different, they have many points in common. The purpose of dhyana yoga, dhyan means that the mind is fixed. In Bhakti-yoga, the goal is also to fix the mind on Krishna. Although dhyan, meditation, that is it's a static state, it's neutral state, one simply meditates. Whereas in bhakti, one doesn't simply think about the object of meditation, but directly engages in the service of the object of meditation with love. Nadu Sudan doesn't like to hear the lecture. Busy doing something else. So that object of love is Krishna. So to think about one object only, it means not thinking about anything else. That's an obvious statement. Now, we find that difficult to do, to think about one thing only. If we ask anyone to meditate on one object only, it's very difficult to do. Because if we think of one thing, then that will make us think of something else. Because everything is in relationship to other things. Just like, think of anything. Think of a microphone. All right, let's think of a microphone. Well, if we think of a microphone, what will we do? We'll keep a picture in our mind of a microphone. But then, because the nature of the mind is to keep on moving, then we start thinking something related to the microphone. What is inside it? How does it work? Or I could use this for speaking. And then we could imagine that I'm speaking to a huge crowd, I'm a big politician. And all of a sudden, our meditation on a microphone went into fantasizing about being the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. So like this, we have experience. One thought will take us to another thought, and just in this way the mind will range over an incredible canvas, an incredible vista of panorama of different objects, scenes. So impersonal meditation, they say just to meditate on nothing or oneness or the light. There's no variegatedness, no variety. That's considered the only way you can meditate and keep the mind from wandering. If you think of nothing, if you meditate on nothing, then there's no thing for the mind to wander off into. But the only problem is it's very difficult to meditate on nothing, because all the time something comes into the mind. And even if you try to meditate just upon light, then you start to think, well, where does the light come from? Or maybe someone's dancing in the light. So meditation on Krishna is not exactly the same as meditation on the impersonal void or impersonal light. The object of meditation is one, Krishna. But Krishna has many activities. So meditation on Krishna means to meditate on how he is taking the cows out in the forest of Vrindavan, how he is lifting Govardhan Hill, his various avatars. So meditation on Krishna, although the object is one, there's much variety in that meditation. So this is very natural and practical for the mind, because the mind is always moving, so we're recommended move as Krishna moves. Move on the subject of Krishna's activities. And within this world, we have to serve Krishna, so we have to perform so many activities. And that also requires careful thought, attention, concentration. There's a word in English, conscientiousness. I don't know if you have that in Tamil. It means careful, dutiful attention. One should always be aware of the proper thing to do. Just like there may be so much garbage thrown all over the temple grounds, and you just walk in and you don't bother, you don't really see it because, well, it doesn't bother me, so why should I bother about it? But a conscientious person thinks this is Krishna's temple. We should keep it very clean and nice. So in all aspects of service to Krishna, one should be conscientious. Everything should be done properly for Krishna. Sometimes we think of a pure devotee. Of course, those descriptions are in Shastra, that Romanchakam pashu taranga bhajo. Those descriptions are given. The hairs are standing on end, trembling in ecstasy, and tears flowing in waves due to his absorption in service to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada demonstrated to us what it means to be a practical Paramahamsa. Once Gurudas Prabhu, who was overseeing the construction of the ISKCON Vrindavan temple, prior to its opening in 1975, so he met Srila Prabhupada. Was arriving at the airport. At that time it was called Palam Airport. Now it's called Indira Gandhi International Airport in Delhi. So then they were going in the taxi or whatever it was to Vrindavan. They were driving. And Prabhupada hadn't said anything. So Gurudas was waiting to, what will Prabhupada say? And he was expecting that Krishna's pure devotee is now going to Vrindavan. He'll speak something maybe about Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes. So eventually Prabhupada said something. He said, cement. He wanted to discuss how we're going to get enough cement. Because in those days, cement was rationed, like pretty much everything else in India was rationed in those days. It was very difficult to get sufficient cement to build a temple. So Prabhupada's meditation on Krishna in Vrindavan was what do we need to finish this temple so that we can use this as a preaching base. How was Srila Prabhupada able to spread this Krishna conscious movement all over the world so quickly? Now there may be many factors, so this question could be answered in various ways. But one factor that's connected with the verse we're discussing today is his complete determination. Anyone else would have been discouraged. No one wanted him to go to America. He had to beg a passage on a ship. The ship owner didn't want to give it to him. And no one could understand. He's an old man, he's a sadhu, why didn't he just stay in Vrindavan? What does he want to go sightseeing in America for? Anyway, so many difficulties. If we want to do anything in this world, there are so many difficulties. Often even to make some idlis is some difficulty. Traditionally, the ladies would make that by grinding on a stone, so that's some difficulty. Nowadays, out of the millions of idlis that are made in Tamil Nadu every day, probably not even 1,000 is made on stone. Probably, is it? What would you think? In the village, they're all using mixie, is it? Still, yeah. Maybe hardly more than 1,000 are made. So everyone's using the mixie. It's easy. There's no difficulty if you use a mixie. You know what a mixie is? It's a food grinder, electric food grinder. So, but there's also difficulty. It breaks down. Who's had that experience? Your mixie breaks down. Yeah, all the hands are going up. It breaks down time to time, and then there's no mix. Then it becomes an emergency. You have to get it mended quickly, otherwise no more idlis. And that morning's a complete disaster because you can't, you won't get a mystery at that time of the morning. Mystery, they say in Tamil? No. Means a workman, you can say. Mystery means a skilled or semi-skilled worker, someone who repairs things usually, or a carpenter. It means a skilled laborer. Anyway, that's for the benefit of Gopalacharya and whoever else might be listening to this in future who's not from India. So, anyway, the point is there's always difficulty. So it takes determination to overcome. The mixie breaking, that's not so common, but the current going out, that's very common. How many times it happened? You just put it in, and it stops. So if there's difficulty involved in making idlis, so what to speak of the difficulties of spreading the Krishna conscious movement all over the world? When this Prabhupada first was spreading this ISKCON in India, there was so much propaganda in the newspaper that this is CIA. They thought it's all American, so it must be CIA. There was lots of propaganda. Many people believed it. And ISKCON's first center in Bombay was in a 7-story building, which was, at that time, that was something very prestigious. It was on the top floor, 7th floor. And on the 6th floor was the Pakistani consulate. So the newspapers were saying, see, that's proof, it shows. There was so much unnecessary mistrust, distrust. And then eventually they got the land in Juhu, which has now become a very famous center of ISKCON, Juhu in Bombay. But at that time, it was terror. It was just full of rats and snakes and mosquitoes. And see, nowadays many people are going there to visit the temple. At that time, people used to go there early in the morning for some business that people do early in the morning. You don't know because you all, everyone now, they have attached bathrooms. But in those days, most of India, they used to go for a walk in the field first thing in the morning. So there were so many difficulties, but Prabhupada was determined. Even if his own disciples didn't understand, or all of his disciples said, Prabhupada, there are so many problems here trying to get this center built in Juhu. We have got the solution. We know what the solution is. We'll forget this land and go back to that nice apartment in the 7-story building. Prabhupada wouldn't allow them. Stay and suffer. But, of course, he said everything should be built in 6 months, although it took them 7 years eventually. But he was determined that there should be a center. And because of that determination, Prabhupada was able to spread this Krishna conscious movement all over the world. So in our own spiritual lives, of course, determination is also required. Here it's described about the yogis, how determined they have to be. What kind of determination do you need to be a yogi? To sit in a cave in the Himalayas and very austere condition. And for years and years and years just performing austerities. We see at Kumbh Mela, which every 12 years in Prayag, the yogis come down from the Himalayas. They're very austere. So they have great determination not to engage in any kind of sense gratification. We don't ask people in Krishna consciousness to perform such severe austerities. But determination is required. Most people have very little determination for spiritual life. Many people have determination for material life. Even to do anything worthwhile in this world, in material life, the determination is also required. You see the young children from a young age, they're studying from like 5 o'clock in the morning, and before they go to school they have tuition, and after school they have tuition. They're very determined from a young age to be successful in studies. So to achieve anything, one has to be determined. Here it's describing the yogis, Prabhupada has elaborated in the purport, how they withdraw their minds from sense gratification. That is required in Bhakti-yoga also. Bhakti-yoga, means always thinking of Krishna. That means always thinking of Krishna's enjoyment. If we're thinking of my enjoyment, then we cannot be Krishna conscious. So that requires determination to overcome the tendency to think about my enjoyment. If we try to meditate on the light or the void, we'll find that very quickly we're thinking about plans for my own enjoyment. And even if we try to think about Krishna, soon, unless we're very determined, our thoughts will go to our own enjoyment. So it requires great determination to keep fixed on the path of Krishna consciousness. It's a different quality of determination to those who want to be successful materially. What we call success and what they call success is something diametrically opposite. They consider success to get lots of money so they can enjoy this material world. And devotees consider success to be free of even the desire to enjoy this material world. But in either endeavor, determination is required. This chapter describes the determination of the yogis. People have got very poor spiritual determination in this age. I didn't say Kali Yuga. We may find someone is determined for material advancement. They get up very early in the morning. But if we ask them to, now you take up chanting Hare Krishna, and if they see the rules, they become disturbed in their minds. If we ask people that you stop drinking coffee, they think this is something terrible. That they just... Or even people, they're kind of half taking to Krishna consciousness, and they find, it's very difficult to overcome this. Or even they've given it up, but then they visit their relatives, and their relatives say, well, why don't you drink coffee? And say, well, why don't I drink coffee? You're right. Very poor determination. Or this anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjanam. These two related principles which are essential for advancement in Krishna consciousness. To accept whatever is favorable for advancing in Krishna consciousness, and to reject whatever impedes our advancement in Krishna consciousness. So we have to know what is favorable and what is unfavorable. And we have to apply that with intelligence. That is described here, buddhya dhriti grihitaya, that this determination is based on intelligence. People who want to be materially successful, they think that taking to Krishna consciousness is crazy, because it seems very intelligent to them to apply their intelligence to become materially successful. And the endeavor to become Krishna conscious, they think, well, that's crazy. You don't get anything good out of that. So they measure what is favorable and unfavorable in terms of their career advancement, because they are not Atma Samstha. They're not situated in the self or knowledge of the self. Devotees, they are truly Atma Samstha, fixed in knowledge of the self, because they know I am an eternal servant of Krishna. So understanding this, they apply their intelligence in every situation. And thus, they are not swayed by what anyone who is not Krishna conscious says to them. Everything we do, what we eat, what we wear, how we dress, all these kind of things. Now we may think, well, dress doesn't matter very much. But if we want to please Krishna more, then we will dress in the way that Krishna prefers us to. Gaura Bhakta Priya Vesha Dadhamana Tilak Tulasi Mala Shobhamana. That is described by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Dressing in a manner which is pleasing to the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, with tilak and tulasi mala. So, if we're fixed in the self, if we know that I'm a servant of Krishna, then we'll always prefer to dress like this. But if we're not Atma Samsta, if we identify ourselves in terms of family, relations, caste, and all this kind of thing, then we'll be affected by other people who also consider like that. And then we'll be affected that, oh, what do my relatives think of me? What do my caste members think of me? So this determination is based on the intelligence of understanding that I am the servant of Krishna. Those who do not have determination, they cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. So any problem comes and they become disturbed. Instead of thinking that this is an opportunity for me to serve Krishna in some difficulty, they think, oh, everything finished. Once one devotee, he went to visit another devotee who was living in a village, and he found he'd stopped chanting Hare Krishna. He found the devotee living in the village had stopped chanting Hare Krishna. So why have you stopped chanting? Oh, my mind is so disturbed, there are so many family problems. This means not Atma Samsta, not fixed in the self. That if the mind is disturbed, we should chant more. We should know that the problems, always there will be problems. There'll never be a time when there are not problems in this material world. Sometimes there are more, sometimes there are less. But one who is fixed in knowledge of the self knows that I am an eternal servant of Krishna. Whatever goes on in this material world, I have to serve Krishna. So this determination is required. And definitely everyone will be tested in various ways. We shouldn't think that, well, I'll take to Krishna consciousness, then all the problems will stop. That's a complete misunderstanding. It's not that Krishna told Arjuna that Arjuna was saying, I don't know what to do, and Krishna didn't say, well, okay, I'm God, I'll just solve all your problems for you. Krishna could have done that, but he didn't. Why didn't he just, by his desire, make the whole situation nice? He didn't. Why is that? Well, one reason is because Krishna gives minute independence to all the jivas. So the various jivas involved in that situation were in that situation because of their misuse of their independence in various ways. Arjuna is a pure devotee of Krishna. He was not misusing his independence, but still he was in such a difficult situation. So Krishna didn't just dissolve all the difficulties. He said, no, you face them. Bhakti is tested in difficulty. Anyone can, say, I'm a devotee. But that is tested when there may be so many ways in which it may be tested. In Mayapur, many years ago, there was an attack on our temple. Actually, more than once it happened. One time at night, a gang of gundas came, thieves, and they attacked the temple. They wanted to steal they thought the deities were made of gold, so they wanted to steal them. So some devotees locked themselves in their rooms, and some came out to face the gundas who were armed with bombs and sticks and guns, and the devotees didn't have anything to defend themselves. So that was a great test. How many of us would be willing to risk our lives? It's easy to say, yes, I'm a devotee, but when the test comes, we have to see. So we shouldn't be overcome by very small difficulties. This child should be restrained from playing. Who's the parents? They should take. Now you may say, why am I being disturbed by this difficulty? Because that's disturbing the concentration that you can listen to this talk about Krishna consciousness. The child has no determination. If you try to restrain them, they will simply cry or protest. So we should not be childish. When there are difficulties, we should understand this is Krishna's mercy on me. And go forward in Krishna consciousness. Don't just hide away or try to avoid it. Now we may wonder, well, what is this determination? How does that match with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction to be humble? Chunadapi sunich, this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught us that we should consider ourselves lower than the grass. And when we think of someone who's determined, we think of someone who's very solid and strong and they won't listen to anyone. But determination in Krishna consciousness is not the pig-headedness of a stubborn wretch. This Hiranyakashipu is an example of being determined. His determination was demoniac. But a devotee's determination, that doesn't mean that because he's very strong in his resolve, doesn't mean that he oppresses others. Just like I was saying, Prabhupada was pushing the devotees. No, you stay in that garbage pit of a place and develop and make it into a temple. So you might think, well, Prabhupada was just oppressing them. No one's going to take hold of this boy. He can play outside, but not here. Where's the parents? There are no parents. They abandoned him. I don't know what to do if the parents aren't here. How is that? So, no, but Prabhupada was materially that might be considered as suffering, but Prabhupada was given the opportunity to serve Krishna. There's a lot of mercy to be had by serving Krishna in difficult situations. That doesn't mean that we should just deliberately try to make everything difficult for no reason. We see that some kind of yogis, they do that. They'll sit on thorns. I've seen at Kumbh Mela. They sit on thorns. So that's one kind of tapasya. But that's meaningless because Krishna is not served any better by sitting on thorns. It's certainly the opposite of sense gratification. But it's also a kind of sense gratification. Immediately when I saw that yogi, that was 1989, Ardha Kumbh Mela, sitting on thorns in the roadway. I thought, why is he doing it in the roadway? So that everyone can see him. That's a kind of sense gratification, that they'll see him and be impressed. So there may be some minor austerities that we accept for the sake of pleasing Krishna. We may fast on Ekadashi, we may not eat anything or take any water. So that is done for the pleasure of Krishna, not just not eating, but utilizing the time for engaging in Krishna Kirtan. That is favorable for Krishna consciousness. So by austerity, the heart should not become hard like that of the yogis. The devotee is determined and humble. He's determined to be humble. He's determined to overcome the wavering of the mind, determined to serve Krishna in all circumstances. Is there any question about this? Yeah, what's the question?
Maharaj, in Vrindavan Parikrama, we can see some devotees making this 108 pranams and going around with keeping some stones after keeping other places. Whether it is hospitality and what kind of hospitality?
Say it in Tamil. Well, it's definitely austerity. There's no need to ask that. That is the kind of austerity that is done for the pleasure of Krishna. Performing parikrama in that way. The idea is that one offers obeisances at each, one offers dandavat at each point. That's the idea. We can do also, but we don't generally recommend so much. Better you go out and distribute Prabhupada's books. That's also austerity. But that benefits others. That's pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. We get his mercy by doing so. In the Sankirtan movement, we don't just perform activities for our own advancement, but we always think how we can help others also. You have another question? No. Give them mic.
Guru Maharaj, suppose a person is trying to become a devotee and he is performing the rules and regulations given by the Shastras, prescribed by ISKCON, and he is performing all the activities, and sometimes his determination comes down, then again coming up, like this zigzag until he ends up here.
What's that, the last thing you said? Determination down,
goes
then
up and down.
Yeah, then?
Zigzag. Will it continue till the end of life?
So, what goes until the end?
Yeah, say it in Tamil. What will happen? Well, you pick up in the next life where you finished in this one. So you may be born again and take up bhakti again and again up and down, up and down, up and down. That's why buddhya dhriti grihitaya is mentioned here. One should have the intelligence to become determined. When you say determination goes up and down, that's not determination. Determination means it doesn't go up and down. So we have to, by intelligence based on knowledge, on Shastra, we have to decide what we want. What do you want? You want to go up and down, up and down, up and down, life after life, or you want to go to Krishna? We have to do whatever is required to go to Krishna. So everything we do should be for what is favorable for advancing in Krishna consciousness. All right, so what time is the arti? Quarter to 1?
Yeah, supposed to be.
All right, well, if there's no other question, then...
The mental consciousness, they said that according to astrology, the mental consciousness, the state of mind changes time to time. So how to keep determination in Krishna consciousness in spite of that?
According to astrology, according to anything. You don't need to be an astrologer to understand that. You take to this process of Krishna consciousness under the guidance of devotees. You know, it's not just a matter of chanting 16 rounds and following 4 principles. We should be prepared to take direction also. Because I'm asking devotees, you should go out on book distribution, but they don't like to do it. That will be very good for you and good for others. But people are busy. You see, everything we do, we should organize our lives. Prabhupada writes, we should organize our lives in a way that we cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours a day. So we should take direction on how to organize our lives so that we can at least think of Krishna some of the day. Then we can eventually come to the point of remembering Krishna all the day. Yeah, you wanted to ask a question. Who is that? Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Our determination is based on our senior devotees who is guiding us. And some of our the devotees suddenly called us since our determination is also shaking. So in this situation, how we should
say in Tamil? Are you in that situation?
Yes. Sometimes
anyone guiding you fell down?
not exactly guiding.
Then what's the use of the question? What's the point? Now what will happen if, someone in Pakistan drops an atom bomb on this temple? Well, if it happens, we'll think about it. If we're alive to think in this body to think about it. Otherwise, what's the point of discussing it? If you don't have faith that the people guiding you are fit to do so, then don't follow them. And then you have to follow your own mind. Just a second, could we turn all these cell phones off? This is ridiculous, throughout the whole class, they'll be going off all the time. It's just a basic etiquette. You should turn it off when you come into a lecture. Anyway, did you translate that, what I said? All right, so then we should have arati, huh? All right, Hare Krishna.